We are seeing the danger of over-reliance on the United States economically and also from a security perspective. We're going to bring it from 25% to 50%, the tariffs on steel. So, as things stand, this is a break, not a break-up. But if Trump keeps this up, you never know. The USAIA tariffs were unlawful as well as unjustified. I think you're going to see shipments from Canada to the United States completely stop. The government welcomes yesterday's decision by the US Court of International Trade, which is consistent with Canada's long-standing position. So we as a confident country with an ambitious plan, we look outward. We look to Europe, we look to Asia, we look to new partners. No negotiations, no warnings, just a 50% steel tariff, double the 25% he slapped on back in April. The message, America First has no room for neighbors. We're going to bring it from 25% to 50% the tariffs on steel into the United States of America, which will even further secure the steel industry. Donald Trump believes tariffs are weapons, and he's firing them like missiles. But this one doesn't just hit Canada, it shakes the very foundation of North America's economic alliance. If we look at the interview Prime Minister Mark Carney gave 2 days ago, he clearly said that Canada is already working on making trade and defense deals with the EU and Asia. We are seeing the danger of over-reliance on the United States economically, and also from a security perspective. So we will cooperate where necessary when it's in both of our interests, very clearly. But we won't necessarily cooperate, so we, as a confident country with an ambitious plan, we look outwards. We look to Europe. We look to Asia. We look to new partners that we're going to deepen with. This statement marks a turning point in Canada's history. Carney isn't just hinting at change, he's announcing it. Canada is done waiting for the US to act like a stable partner. It will now choose its own path, with or without American approval. Carney's words are powerful. We won't necessarily cooperate. That's a clear warning to Washington. Canada is no longer under the US umbrella. It is a confident, self-reliant nation that can and will work with Europe, Asia, and other global players if needed. This is not just about policy. It's about survival. Trump's unstable behavior, aggressive tariffs, and reckless diplomacy have made Canada realize that relying too much on the US is dangerous. Whether it's trade, military support, or environmental issues, the US under Trump has shown it's unpredictable. That's no way to build a future. When he announced the 25% tariff on April 2nd, Canadian steel producers were already scrambling. Businesses paused shipments, manufacturers held emergency calls. Now he's doubling it. This isn't a policy, it's an ambush. Trump claims this move will secure the steel industry, but what he's really doing is securing political points with his base at the cost of cross-border stability. These tariffs aren't protecting American steel, they're isolating American industries. Nearly half of US steel imports come from Canada, an ally, not a rival. Defense contractors, aerospace giants, car manufacturers, all of them depend on Canadian steel. Raising the tariff to 50% is like choking your own oxygen supply and expecting to breathe better. Behind closed doors in Washington, this move sparked quiet panic. Officials inside the Commerce Department reportedly warned of immediate disruptions. The White House hasn't even completed the legal framework yet. Trump's going public. This kind of economic chaos used to come from unstable markets, not the President of the United States. Replacing Canadian supplies, easier said than done for key American industries like aerospace and defense, with Canada as the largest steel and aluminium supplier to the US. Prime Minister Mark Carney spent much of the campaign pushing back against Trump's tariffs, instead leaving it to the Canada-US Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc, who tweeted he's taken note of what Trump has said and promised to defend workers and community. Trump has promised the tariffs would come in on June 4th, but he hasn't signed anything to make that official, which could lead to a movie we saw back in March. He has made the decision to add a 25% tariff. So now steel aluminium tariffs will come into effect tomorrow at the rate of 50%. The administration ended up quickly backing down before those additional tariffs came into force, but the constant threats underscore the chaos that is rapidly hurting Canadian businesses. This isn't just bad policy, it's dangerous. Canada is the #1 steel and aluminium supplier to the US. You can't rip out half of your supply chain overnight and pretend nothing will break. Aerospace and defense sectors tied directly to national security are at risk. Canadian steel is not a luxury, it's a necessity. And yet Trump is pushing forward without even signing the official order. We've seen this movie before: loud declarations, legal confusion, and last-minute backpedaling. But while Washington dithers, real damage is being done across Canada. Orders are frozen, contracts are suspended, jobs are on the line. Businesses don't operate in limbo. They need certainty, not chaos. The deeper issue is trust. For decades, Canada stood by the US in war, in peace, in trade. Now Trump is rewriting the rulebook mid-game. This isn't negotiation, it's provocation. The government welcomes yesterday's decision by the US Court of International Trade, which is consistent with Canada's long-standing position that the US AIPA tariffs were unlawful as well as unjustified. That said, we recognize that our trading relationship with the United States is still profoundly and adversely threatened and affected by similarly unjustified 232 tariffs against steel, aluminium, and the auto sector, as well as continuing threats of tariffs against other strategic sectors, including lumber, semiconductors, and pharmaceuticals. PM Mark Carney's response is diplomatic but honest. He welcomes the court's decision because it aligns with what Canada had been saying, that Trump's tariffs were unlawful and unfair. But what stands out is the second half of his statement. Even after this legal victory, Canada still feels threatened. That tells us how deep the damage goes. Carney isn't celebrating just yet. Why? Because many harmful tariffs are still in place, especially under Section 232, which allows tariffs for national security reasons. Trump used this rule to hit Canada's steel, aluminium, and even car parts, all products that are vital to both counts' economies. That's why Carney says the trading relationship is still profoundly and adversely threatened. This is not just trade drama. It's about trust between two of the world's closest allies. Carney talks about building a new relationship, which shows he doesn't believe things can go back to the way they were under Trump. He also hints at turning to other global partners if the US can't be counted on. In short, while the court decision gives hope, it also reminds us how much damage has been done. Carney is preparing for a future where Canada might need to stand more independently. And while Trump plays economic roulette, Canada is preparing to walk away from the table entirely. Enter Mark Carney, Canada's new Prime Minister, an economist with deep European roots and zero tolerance for Trump's unpredictability. He isn't tweeting insults, he's drafting strategy. And his silence on Trump's latest move, that's not weakness, that's calculation. He's letting his trade minister speak for now. But make no mistake, Carney's next move could redraw alliances for good. The 50% tariff isn't just about steel, it's a trigger point one that may push Canada straight into Europe's arms, ending decades of North American unity. It wasn't just a policy, it was a punch in the gut. That's how Canada's top steel executive described Trump's 50% tariff announcement. Not strategy, not negotiation, just brute force from an unpredictable partner. The kind of move that doesn't just hurt business, it shakes national confidence. We've had months and months of disarray and uncertainty. So this is yet another, punch in the gut, if you will, from the president on the domestic steel industry here in Canada. We're their largest trading partner in steel, they're our largest trading partner as well. And we're highly integrated. And simply put, we do not understand at all why this is happening. And it will have negative consequences. Obviously negative consequences in Canada with the domestic steel industry in many forms. But it will also have significant consequences to the United States in terms of security of supply and in terms of pricing. Well, the president actually did do this once before, just ahead, I think it was in mid-March. And we thought at that point, so I guess we always know there's a risk, unpredictability with the president. But did we expect this? Absolutely not. And we didn't expect tariffs in the first place, given the business that I was describing earlier and how integrated we are with the United States. It's completely unjustified. The voice of Catherine Cobden isn't just a corporate opinion, it's the cry of an entire industry. Canada and the US built their steel economies like a joint machine. Every beam, every sheet, every welded part often started on one side of the border and finished on the other. This isn't just trade, it's integration. Trump didn't just disrupt this system, he tore it apart with no warning and no explanation. Cobden's reaction captures a national betrayal. Canada wasn't dumping steel, it wasn't undercutting prices. It was the US's biggest ally, and it still got slammed. Cobden makes it clear the tariff is unjustified, not based on data, not backed by evidence, and certainly not aligned with the deeply connected supply chain that both countries have relied on for decades. Her words aren't angry, they're stunned. This wasn't supposed to happen between friends. Imagine the chaos. Factories frozen, contracts dissolved, shipping routes halted. Canadian companies that have spent decades building trust with American buyers are now being punished for their loyalty. It's like being evicted from your own house by your neighbor during winter. And what does this say to other global partners? If the US can flip on Canada, how safe is anyone else? Trump's unpredictability has turned America from a trusted giant into a reckless bully, and the whole world is watching. Absolutely. The primas that are, that have the most steel in their province are deeply engaged, and we expect they will be raising this as well with the federal government.